I got to tell you, pre-COVID, I traveled a lot. And so I would walk through the Dallas Love Field Airport and think, oh my goodness, we ought to be in here. Like, we truly ought to be here and in here. And you know how I am, Tex, kind of like world domination, takeover spirit. I'm like, we got to do a takeover of this airport. And of course, when I start to envision a complete takeover, having the Mavs out there, a whole new look, of course, you know who I thought about. There's one person who I know who carry out that vision for us, and that's, of course, you, Tex. So it was, thank you for like really leading and carrying out that vision. Why did you think it was a good fit for us?
I just think, it was an interesting time, obviously, with COVID hitting. And I just think it was something that we could do to obviously speak to the team spirit, but just also to uplift everybody, and their coming and goings. And it gave us an opportunity with the airport being down traffic-wise for a while, that when everybody got a chance to start to come back to travel, they got something that was warm and inviting and spoke to them from this city.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hey, welcome to Dallas Love Field Airport's Lead with Love, where guests have an opportunity to talk about how strong leadership, respect for diversity and inclusion, and celebration of local culture makes a difference in our community. I'm Veletta Forsythe Lill. I got a lot of formers in front of my name, former Dallas City Council member, former and founding executive director of the Dallas Arts District. And joining me today, Benjamin Espino, the general manager of the Latino Cultural Center and the assistant director of the Office of Arts and Culture, who wears a lot of different hats, and he doesn't have all of them on today. But he also serves on Cultural Tourism Committee for Visit Dallas. These are the folks that try to get you to come in town and see what we're doing. And Viola Delgado, my dear friend and internationally acclaimed public and studio artist, whose studio art has been seen and included in exhibits around the world. Obviously, Dallas-Fort Worth, where we'll talk a little bit about, New York City, Munich, Prague, down in Mexico, etc. And she's working on some very large pieces at this very moment. Locally, she can be seen at that other airport, DFW Airport, Terminal D, your international terminal, and at the Lake June and Rowlett Dallas area rapid transit stations, and at the Latino Cultural Center. She's currently working on a 5-piece sculpture, which will be located at Dallas City Hall, and designing the art for DFW North Dart Station and a 35-foot glass mosaic ellipse for another one of my favorite buildings, the Trinity River Audubon Center. Benjamin, it's great to see you.
Great to see you too.
We love being together and talking about culture, and as part of our branding, they sent us around these little Lead with Love masks. Remember, when we go to the airport, we got to wear our masks. So we're leading with love today. Oh, you guys look fabulous.
They're really cool.
They're cool, and they're nice
I'll
and
use
soft.
that one.
I like that. Viola, fabulous to see you.
Well, it's good to see you too. Hadn't seen you in a while.
I know, and you got a new knee.
I have a new knee. Thank goodness. I'm sure a lot of people are real happy about that.
Well, welcome to all who joined us on Facebook and on YouTube. We want to hear from you today. Make your comments known. You have that ability. So let's get this party started.
Great.
Well, one of my favorite places, I admit to you, I've got about 4 favorite buildings in Dallas. The Latino Cultural Center is one, the Winspear Opera House is one, the Hall of State at Fair Park, and the Trinity River Audubon Center, all owned actually by the city of Dallas. Benjamin, you get to work every day in one of those beautiful buildings. What's your favorite aspect of a beautiful Ricardo Legorreta designed building?
Well, architecturally speaking, I really think the natural light at sunset is probably one of the best aspects of the building. The way the sun hits the portico is absolutely stunning. From a programmatic perspective, whenever we have a large festival like, say, our Day of the Dead festival, and you have several thousand people from diverse backgrounds reflecting the beautiful cultures of our city of Dallas, I think would probably be one of the best things.
You know, when it was open, and David Dillon, who was the architecture critic for the Dallas Morning News at the time, did a review of it, and he said, I think the city had put in $10 million because there were obviously private funding as well. He said it was the best $10 million the city of Dallas had ever spent, and I would agree with him. It's a fabulous space.
Well, I believe 17 years later, Mark Lavster named as one of the top 10 buildings of the last 40 years. Remember, as you might recall, David Dillon's original essay back in 1980 is "Why is Dallas architecture so bad?" And so he obviously made a splash with that one.
But in this case, in the case of Latino Cultural Center, we had not one but 2 architecture critics who thought this was a good building. And you have the opportunity right now, it's going to be expanded. Can you talk to us a little bit about when that's coming and what that's going to do?
Sure. So in the original master plan, the original planning for the building begins in 1995, which City Council authorized the feasibility study for that. So phase 1, or the original part of the building, was completed in September of 2003, with grand opening festivities of September 16th to 23rd, 2003. It was a private-public partnership, as Veletta just mentioned, so it was actually $5.6 million in city funding and $4.2 million in private contributions. Phase 2 is part of the master plan that was designed by Ricardo Legorreta in 2006, and with bond funding, we were able to activate those funds through our Dallas Cultural Plan, which we'll talk about later, hopefully, in this broadcast, in order to build a 5,500 square foot black box theater that is a wonderful addition to the center part of the master plan.
And desperately needed. We kind of found out when we did the master plan for the city of Dallas, the cultural master plan, that a lot of folks were asking for those small, intimate theater spaces. So you're at the forefront in creating a new one. How have your exhibitions and performances kind of changed over that time?
So I think the LCC has grown. Obviously, pre-pandemic, we were at about 500,000 individuals, but even during the pandemic, we were able to continue innovative programming, whether that was outside utilizing the plaza or the parking lot last summer. Adaptive Dallas did a performance in November outside in the plaza, and then kind of a theater company did an interactive, more performance art piece in late November, early December 2020. So continuing and trying to keep the center alive and going while a pandemic was going on. We do 6 to 8 exhibits annually. Viola plays an integral role as an independent curator and advisor to me. I would not be here to work for her, as I always tell her. And so then we're also seeing that since I've been manager almost 10 years, we've had an additional 20 groups that now utilize the center. So really there is a need, as you said, Veletta, for the secondary performance hall, or sorry, the black box, which is our second performance space.
Well, I have to say that you guys were pretty innovative in the use of your space during the pandemic. I went to see the Cube, and we got to chat a bit about into the construction. But I also came to your first performance, kind of outdoor, indoor performance, which had a lot of a very indigenous feel as well, which is part of what you do. You're covering a lot of it's not, our city is made up of, it's about 40% non-Anglo, so Hispanic, but that is largely of Mexican American descent here in Dallas, but we have a very broad spectrum beyond that, and you've done a good job with broadening that reach to different communities. Right now you've got 2 exhibitions. I came to see Marine Park, which is street photography. And
he actually has a DFA from UNT, but was actually a skateboarder and continues to skateboard. And so it's actually based on a skateboarding park in one of the suburbs. It escapes me, I believe, North Richland Hills, but he did receive his BFA in studio art from UNT. So it's great to find these up and coming artists who are building on the canon of photography and adding their own flavor to it, especially a Latino or Latinx, if you will, if we're still going to use that term 20 years from now. I wonder how that will evolve compared to Chicano, and how Chicano obviously fell out of vogue at some point. So
yeah. Viola and I are old enough to remember when it was Chicano.
The Chicano movement.
Well, I didn't want to say Chicano dinosaurs, but that might be the term. So.
Thank you, Benjamin.
And there was a nice piece actually in the morning news over the weekend about
the Marine Park.
Short piece about the exhibition. So
yes.
Get over there. And you want to talk for just a second about the other exhibition?
So the other exhibition, the second exhibit is actually Jose Villalobos. He's a San Antonio-based LGBTQ artist who actually, right before COVID happened, we met on February 13th of 2020 to plan his exhibition for June of 2020. And at that point, he actually had received the Joan Mitchell Fellowship and was headed to New Orleans. The Joan Mitchell Foundation was generous enough to let him keep the grant money, and hopefully he'll do the fellowship. And he actually is one of those younger artists that has started to really appear both nationally. I believe Tucson Art Museum is picking up his work, and another museum that I can't name yet. It looks like it's going to give him a major focus exhibit too. A contemporary art museum is pretty well known in North Texas. So that's enough I can say there. And so he really plays with the ideas of masculinity and toxic masculinity within Latino, or especially Mexican culture, especially as it does with charreada, or those that actually have horses. And so it's actually really more, Jose's work is intellectually challenging at the same time, and it can be a little bit hard. He did a performance art piece where he talked about how we have to hide part of ourselves as LGBT. If you are LGBTQ, you hide. And then he had 5 hats on stage, and then he ate dirt between each part of it. As he said, silence, you have to change. Silence, you have to change. So I was sitting with Mark Castro, the George Valdor curator of Latin American art, and Giovanni Valderas in the front row, and part of the dirt was hitting us. So it was really rather powerful.
Well, I will say, I didn't see that performance, but the exhibit, extremely well done, but it is a little jarring.
Yes.
But I encourage folks, whenever there's go and see the exhibitions at the Latino Cultural Center. Use your Latino Cultural Center. Viola?
Yes.
You know, Some of the analysis in the past has shown women artists in collections were certainly a lot fewer than men. Actually, the collections in most museums are about 87% male and every 85% Anglo. And that's changing.
It's changing very fast too.
Yeah, it's accelerated. But you have been an artist and curating Latina artists for decades, way ahead of your time. How have women artists and artists of color changed over that year over those years in terms of what they were focusing on, and how they felt about their artwork?
Well, I think that the women, the artists that we have now are so integrated into so many different galleries, especially right now. You have several galleries that have been around for a long time, but are now bringing in a lot of women of color. I want to go back to the Latino Cultural Center because I really believe that the Latino Cultural Center has played a big part in making women, Latina women, be seen, or Latinas be seen in gallery spaces, in not just the park, not just the rec centers where we used to go. You know, we used to be known as the Cinco de Mayo artists. You know, they would call when these festivals would come around and want us to go exhibit our work. My thought was always, I don't care if I exhibit in a restroom. You know how many people go to the restroom and they get bored. So if you want to see art, put it in there. I don't care. Just put it somewhere. But I started doing more women because I was looking to find women to exhibit through the Latino Cultural Center. As Benjamin and I had talked about, and previously Alejandrina Drew and I had talked about bringing in women. But then Benjamin was real big into let's get this going. And so when I was trying to do my research, I couldn't find that many women to our Latinas to exhibit. They just weren't out there, or there wasn't information. They were out there, there just wasn't information on them. So I started really calling people. Santa Barraza was very helpful and down in Kingsville and giving me information. Judy Baca out in California, you know, Martha Sanchez out in the Northeast. So I started talking to women that were not just in Texas, but outside of Texas too, and started bringing them in. We started doing an exhibit called Cinco Latinas, and we started with 5 women that were local, but they were all women that were from different countries, or they were Tejanas, you know, but they had been around for a while, so their work was up to par. We wanted a class A, you know, exhibit, so we wanted to really show and shine. So we did the Cinco Latinas. A couple of years later, we did the Diez Latinas, which is 10 Latinas. And we expanded and got even more women interested. And by this time, we were beginning to be known, and people were beginning to come. Collectors were coming. There were gallery owners were coming. People from out of town were coming. It just became really big. So for us, the Latino Cultural Center was really a big conduit in getting these names and these women out into the public. So it really helped me. I didn't really know much about curating, but I would call Joanna Roundtree over at the when she was alive, but over at the museum, and I would at the Nasher, I would call Philip Collins. I would, you know, call anybody who was at my fingertips to come over, take a look, tell me what I'm missing here or what I need to do. But yes, the Latino Cultural Center was very helpful in that, and I don't want us to ever forget that. But now I'm seeing that more women are going now through Tally Dunn. They're going through. They're bringing more women in, like Vicky Meek, and they're bringing in women over at Erin Cluley. Yes, thank you. With Nan or Neil, Nell, I'm sorry, Nell, very good friend of mine, and I keep forgetting her name, Nell Langford, who is really, really dedicated to bringing in women of color. So I think that people are beginning to see, that we're out here and we need a place to exhibit. So I said earlier that it was happening very rapidly, but from where we were to now, it seems like everybody's jumping on, or more people are jumping on. So we're seeing more retrospectives of people, women, also in Texas and outside of Texas. So, but again, the Latino Cultural Center was very, very supportive of getting women on board. And we just got we just got a grant. We got the Kalita Doolin grant to continue doing this, Benjamin, and we will be doing it at the Latino Cultural Center. So it will be called the Quince Latinas. And I think that's where I'm stopping. I'm not too sure, but I think that's where I'm stopping. 15 women to deal with is a little bit too much for me, but I think that's where I'll stop. But we're really looking forward to it. But Veletta, on another note to that, also YouTube we have now gone through YouTube, and all the interviews that we did with the artists are now on there individually. So you can tap into any, Ivana Cero, you can tap into any of the women, Sara Carmona, all of those women, and you hear their interview from where they started to where they are now. And good news on those two women is that Sara has now exhibited at the Contemporary in San Antonio, and Yvonne just had a piece bought by the museum, so with the Dallas Museum of Art. So they're beginning to hear about the women all through the articles that were written for the Diez Latinas and through the Latino Cultural Center. So to answer, it's kind of a long answer, but yes, I think that we're beginning to be noted now.
And I think, of course, Benjamin's going to need an even bigger space. He's already going to expand with the black box and 125 seats. And he will, and you, Benjamin, and the Latino Cultural Center is the only city, I think, municipally owned building across America with not one but two Latinx theater companies, which is your claim to fame. And these are theater companies that have been around a while and have made a splash and are doing their own, writing some of their own work and that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's really great to watch Dallas set the national standard for Latino theater. Teatro Dallas was founded in the mid-'80s by Cora Cardona, and then Academia Theater Company was founded in 1997 by Feliberto Gonzalez, and I forget his partner's name. The name is escaping me right now. But both have been have been continuously operating since their start dates. So that's actually really great to see that Dallas is actually setting that national standard for Latino theater.
And in addition to opening up this 125 seat theater, the expansion to open in 2022, you've got more plans on the books. You've got, 5 more acres?
The total campus right now is 5 acres. There is a master plan, but the master plan was drawn up in 2006, so I'm sure that we will revisit that as we reach the 5-year mark of the cultural plan, what you referred to back in 2018. Dallas City Council unanimously approved a cultural plan for the city of Dallas when we took the input of over 10,000 individuals saying, what do you want arts and culture to be over the next decade? And that was led by our director, Jennifer Script. So I think probably around year 5 in 2023, we're going to evaluate what priorities have worked. It's kind of like if you think about Franklin Delano Roosevelt and the New Deal, certain aspects of the New Deal worked and are here with us. Other aspects of it did not work. So we have to sit down at probably at year 5 and evaluate the cultural plan and say, hey, there are 6 priorities and 33 strategies. Some of those strategies may not have come to fruition or were more on a wish list, and then we take the ones that have actually worked, for instance, LCC Phase 2, or several other ones like equity and ensuring that we continue to fund organizations that reflect our city, not predominantly the 5 major organizations that predominantly have been Anglo, per se. And so I think that's going to be very important to look at about 2023 or so.
How does the listening audience find your schedule of both exhibitions and performance? What website do they?
That's actually a great question. So one of the things that we've started doing at the Office of Arts and Culture, so the Latino Cultural Center is a division of the Office of Arts and Culture, is if you go to dallasculture.org, just how it sounds, dallasculture.org, there's an event calendar that has listings of all the cultural centers. There are 4 neighborhood cultural centers, that being the Latino Cultural Center, the Bathhouse Cultural Center, South Dallas Cultural Center, and the Oak Cliff Cultural Center. And we technically consider the Moody Performance Hall, which is actually city-run and city-operated in the Arts District, to be a cultural center, so they do have a gallery space too, and so you can find out everything there.
And we kind of click on, we go to Dallas Culture, and then it has the subdivisions. We kind of click on that. I want to go to the Latino Cultural Center.
Yeah, and so they all populate from the Art and Seek calendar, which is actually one of the best tools that usually has listings of all art and culture in the city of Dallas. Most arts organizations are really good about utilizing the Art and Seek calendar, so that feeds into that.
And arts organizations love free advertising.
I think kudos to KRA, who has 4 or 5 arts reporters still at this time, even in a post-print world. So that's actually really, really nice.
We are fortunate still to have a few folks out there doing the stories, not only about Dallas, but quite frankly about Fort Worth and some of our surrounding communities who are doing work. Viola, you and I have been friends for 30 years.
Yeah.
When I first got to know you, you were working with at-risk youth, painting murals.
Yes, I was with junior players. Yeah.
And murals are the thing now. And in fact, for our listening audience, you heard about Tex Moton's mural at the Love Field parking garage when we opened, and he was one of the original podcasts that you can go back and look into. He also owns Yum's brand, but that you were ahead of your time. So that is probably 30 years ago.
Yes, at the time that I was with junior players and with Kirsten Brandt, and we were doing murals in elementary schools and high schools, our middle schools. We hadn't tapped into high schools just yet, but so we went all over the place. I've always liked color, and I think that color has always, with children, it's always a good thing. It's a feel-good thing. So what I ended up doing is doing rainforests in different colors. Like there would be like a leaf would be purple or magenta or aqua, or they weren't always all just greenery. So we ended up doing a lot of schools with rainforests, where I became known as the rainforest artist, because we were just painting so many of them. But in doing all that, we also found out, and this is why I didn't mention the high school. Later, we got a call from Mesquite High School and from one of the administrators, and wanted us to come in and do graffiti art with them. because they were having a big problem with tagging. And so these students were being put in a class, but they weren't doing anything. They were just sitting in these after school classes doing nothing. So this administrative person decided that it would be good to have them doing something. And he came up, well, they know graffiti. Why can't we teach them art? You know, so I got a call to go teach them how to transfer their graffiti and their tagging into an art piece. And so we ended up going into a Mesquite High School and doing a whole section of the school into a mural by taking their tagging and their graffiti into doing that. But I was telling you one day, Veletta, that I was calling people that I didn't even know, like in New York. These were legendary people that had been graffiti artists and were very well known. Books were written about them and all that, and asking for advice. And I got some really good advice from some of the street artists in New York as to how to do that. And so we got a lot of kids that actually, about 3 of the kids that went in there ended up going to North Texas University to follow up with their art, and they are now doing in their field as artists. So yeah, it was an early start for me, because I had to go from painting on a small canvas to painting on a large wall. And any artist will tell you that it can be a challenge, especially when the schools are old, because there's a lot of cement that is porous. So you had to learn how to treat it and how to prepare it, so that you're able to do canvases on there. Paintings on there. Later, I came up with the idea that maybe we needed to do them on canvas or board, because a lot of the schools were being torn down, and new schools were going up, and so they could transfer the art to the new place. So that's the new thing nowadays, that people are beginning to do. But I wanted to just talk a little bit about the graffiti artists and the muralists, because I'm beginning to see a little bit of the tagging going and being integrated into the mural that they're working on. And it really excites me, because I think it really gives a thumbs up to some of the kids to go ahead and start working that way. It's still their mark. They still have the bubble, the bomb, or lettering and things like that I think are really good. So,
well, how you've been a public artist? You've been hired by cities, by other institutions, airports, etc. How do you get into that line of City of Dallas public artists? And Benjamin, feel free to kind of jump in on that as well.
A lot of that is getting registered through the City of Dallas. But they now have it a lot easier, Benjamin, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, to where you can tap into a cafe call for entry, and a lot of the public art activity is on there, and so anybody can register with them. The problem is, go ahead, Benjamin.
Okay, thank you, Joel. So we actually, public art program is part of the City of Dallas's Office of Arts and Culture. Actually, public art is funded through our bond program. So anytime there's an improvement, whether it's a fire station, a library, streets where you have a median, I believe a certain percent goes to public art. So there is a process. So if you go to dallasculture.org and click on public art program, it's on the homepage. Actually, there are several levels. So there's public art for emerging artists. So there's a program for that. And then there's a program for more established artists. But it is a public process, and we encourage everyone to apply for that program. And on there, you can actually click on public art program, and it has all the details about whether you're an emerging artist or a more established, like artists like Viola. such as her work that she's done, as Veletta mentioned, at the DFW airport, and also with public entities like DART, the Dallas Area Rapid Transit. So it's right there. Sorry, Viola.
And you know, it's encouraging for everybody that is interested in that to apply, because if you're an emerging artist, not necessarily emerging in just your artwork, studio artwork, but you know, emerging, trying to get on through public art, there's always people that can guide you through that. The city of Dallas has an incredible department of public art people that can help you with Kay Kalos and Drema and I forgot who's the other one, Benjamin. There's several people on there, but that can give you information and guide you through everything. So don't get intimidated by, you know, it being city things, because I think as artists sometimes we do that. But jump on board, you know, jump on board. Anything can be changed into public art.
I mean, the public process takes a while. That's the thing, is it can take, you know, 24 months from beginning to completion. So a lot of people may get frustrated, but I mean, again, you're working with a municipality, so one has to have patience, as Veletta so well.
But that's a perfect sort of segue, if you will. The city can be a great partner, and the example here that we are in that bubble at the moment is Love Field is a community partner, and in many cases through their initiatives and initiatives like this show and other things they do. The same is true for our cultural institutions, our libraries, etc. So you see that these institutions kind of leading with love, and that leads me to, and this is just sort of an open question, what does that mean to you when you hear lead with love? You know, kind of, I feel like these are times when the positive isn't always there. And so leading with the positive, with love and inclusivity and participation is something that I think is important in a community. And I think that kind of is what comes to me.
And I think that what you just said in the community, and I think that's where we should lead with love, is start with the community, like, you know, where you live, gathering people around to do artwork, you know, seeing more into your community and then expanding from there. We have some great neighborhoods that are very open to, I'm over at Vickery Park, so I mean, Vickery Meadows. So I know that here there's so many, it's such a diverse group of people living here, and there's so much art all over the place, but not enough. So, and I know Benjamin has always encouraged also to go out into the community and do that. So hopefully, I would think that lead with love would be lead in your community first. Begin at home first, you know.
I would say putting the needs of the community is most important, and I believe that that's one aspect of leading with love, especially if you're in public services, considering that we're here to serve the public, and that to me would be leading with love.
Well, that is perfect, and we want to remind that we're going to go in a moment to our questions from the audience. So I just want to remind people, when they're at the airport, check out on level 2, Garage C, showcasing graffiti artist Tex Moton, and see some of his work. And that's all part of this Lead with Love discussion. Let's see if we've got some questions out there. Okay, this is great. Viola, this is yours. What advice do you have for women artists for getting better known? And you jokingly say we originally met because I said you need to get out there. Come with me to
one of the things that that I always joke about is that, somebody stopped me one day and said, "Are you running for office?" And I said, "No, why?" They said, "Well, we see you everywhere." And I think that's the key, is that I would go directly from working from junior players or before a class in my overalls and on my work clothes and everything, and I would go to a meeting at City Hall to see what's going on, even if it had nothing to do with art. But I would go see what was going on, just so that people would know that the arts were out here. We're out here working in your community. So that, and I always tease Veletta that she used to call me and she'd say, "Oh, I'm going to be at a reception at so and so. Meet me over there." And I'd go straight from work again in my overalls and go to work. So I would say to this person that go to as many things as you can, and let people know that you're an artist and you're out there working.
I know of an artist here in town. Well, I know a number of them here in town, and every opening I go to at every gallery. And I told my son when he went to college, go to gallery openings. They're always free, and you learn things, and you're introduced to interesting.
And there's always food.
And there's always food. And artists are always starving. So this it's a great way to meet people, meet other artists. So go to those gallery openings, and they're always they're noticed in the paper and that sort of thing. In the art press, you can find them on Art and Seek. And it's a great way to meet people, for them to learn about you and learn about the work that you're doing. And then that sort of,
get to know your city council people.
Go know your city council. What's your favorite public art installation? Rapid fire. What's your favorite?
The Henry Moore at City Hall.
Definitely, yeah.
Interestingly enough, they did a high profile of me back when I first started on the council, and that's what I chose as my background, was the Henry Moore, the Dallas piece.
There's also another piece that doesn't get seen very much, but it's a Jesus Morales piece that is over by the Belo Plaza or somewhere over there. It doesn't get seen very much, but a lot of skateboarders are over there, and it's kind of a I don't know, like a Tibetan archway or something like that. It's really beautiful. I don't know if you know that one, Benjamin, but I think you do. It's really pretty, and it's a very strong piece.
Well, we're going to start to wrap things up. I want to thank my guest, Viola Delgado, famous artist, curator, activist, shall we say, in terms of getting our artists out there. Benjamin Espino, who is the man with many hats, the general manager at the Latino Cultural Center and the assistant director of the Office of Arts and Culture. He reminds you to visit dallasculture.org and find out what's happening with our artists and our arts institutions.
Well, Veletta, thank you so much. And Viola, it was always a pleasure to see you.
Thank you. It's good to see y'all. Hopefully we'll see y'all soon in person.
And I love the piece behind you, and we're going to see that in the future at the Oak Cliff.
It will be a 24-foot by 6-foot piece.
We'll look forward to seeing that, and we're looking forward to the opening of the next phase of the Latino Cultural Center in 2022.
Okay, thank you, Veletta, for having us.
Thank you, everybody.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.